Hi, this is Biology in a Minute, and I'm Miss Feldbush. Today, as the next of our continuing series of videos about organic macromolecules, we're going to be talking about lipids. Lipids are basically anything that's greasy or fatty or oily. So butter, margarine, vegetable oil, even chocolate, all of those are made out of lipids. If you look at the structure of lipids, you'll notice that the three elements are the same three elements that we found in carbohydrates. There's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But even though they're the same three elements we saw before, they're put together in a very different way. Remember, carbohydrates were put together in lots of little rings. Instead, lipids are put together with this backbone that's called glycerol, and hooked to the backbone there are these long chains of fatty acids. This different structure is really significant, and it means that lipids are going to have very different chemical properties than carbohydrates did. One of the things that gives them different properties is the nature of those tails that were hooked to the glycerol backbone. Sometimes those tails are very straight, and those straight tails happen when all of the carbon bonds are single bonds. This single bonds make the tails very straight, and so when those tails are very straight, they packed together very closely, and that makes saturated lipids solids at room temperature. So good examples of saturated lipids are bacon grease, cheese, butter. All of those form solids at room temperature. Not only do they form solids at room temperature, they also form solids inside your arteries, and this is one of the reasons that we try to limit our intake of saturated fats in our diet. A much better lipid to eat, if you can, is an unsaturated lipid. And you'll notice just one small difference between the saturated and the unsaturated lipid, and that's this little double bond here. Well, that double bond causes the tails of the lipid, instead of being very straight and packing together, it causes them to bend. And when they bend, it helps the lipid to spread out, and this allows it to flow. So at room temperature, unsaturated lipids are liquids. So olive oil, vegetable oil, fish oil, all of those are considered unsaturated lipids. We try to eat more saturated lipids than unsaturated lipids in our diet. One of the reasons that lipids are so significant in biology is that they make up cell membranes. Cell membranes are made up of molecules that are called phospholipids. Just like the name would suggest, part of the phospholipid is made up of a phosphate, and the other part is a lipid tail. The phosphate head has a negative charge, and because it has a negative charge, it gets along really well with water, and so it's called hydrophilic or water-loving. The lipid tail, on the other hand, doesn't like water, so it's called hydrophobic. It actually tries to hide from water. And the fact that one molecule both loves and hates water at the same time is what allows the cell membrane to form. So here's a close-up of the cell membrane, and you'll notice it's made up of that phospholipid that we just looked at. There is the hydrophobic tail, which is made up of lipids, and the hydrophilic head, which is made up of the phosphates. I like to think of this like a sandwich. The phosphates like water, so they're like the bread of the sandwich, and they sit on the outside. The middle of the sandwich is made up of the lipid tails. So I think of those as peanut butter, which is, after all, made of lipids. And so the peanut butter's on the inside, safe and sound from the water. The phosphates are on the outside, and this double membrane of the cell is going to be really important for allowing certain things to pass through. And so I leave you with a final thought for today by Paula Deen, who's famous for cooking with lots and lots of lipids. And she says, butter? Ah, you mean saturated lipids. So the next time you're eating something oily, fatty, or greasy, think about the lipids and the importance in biology. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Biology in a Minute.